talking about this record and the process of creating this record is very personal for me because it took me being self-encouraged. It took me sticking to something to make it happen. So it was a 10-year process. 4 days after I had my son, I was at a microphone, singing. At the time, actually, a remix of Michael Jackson's I Can't Help It over the original DAT recording for DJ Spinna. And then after that, I did my first session for the record. But when I moved to New York City, the process of actually doing so, where I ended up writing the first song for the record, which would be Running, I basically decided I wasn't going to leave Durham unless I kind of threatened myself to do so, shook my ego. So I told everybody I was going to do my last show because I was moving to New York. And once you tell people that, you actually have to move. You can't just stay there because people are going to talk about you. So I had my last performance. I packed the U-Haul and I took my son to DC to live with my mother while I went to New York. I went to real estate school. I got a job that wasn't music, selling houses. And my ex-husband said one day, I didn't support you in our marriage with this music. Let me support you now. Let me take our son because you haven't been making music. And so I decided to do so, which was a crazy decision. I had to really believe in myself and not in anybody's definition of motherhood in order to go ahead and make this dream come true. And 2 weeks after I did that, I got a call from my old publicist telling me that Lenny Kravitz's people had been looking for me for 6 months and wanted me to audition for his Strut tour. So, everything that I've done for this record has done much more than music for me, because that was the spark I needed to get back in the studio, going out with him. I ended up going to a jam session where Raymond Angry was playing piano. He heard me sing. Next thing, we're in the studio. And I'm really, really digging into doing the ceremony. So over the last 9.5, nearly 10 years, I just kept doing sessions. And at some point, I almost gave up. But Raheem Devon, a good friend of mine, 20 years, from DC, my homeboy, would not let me give up. We did a show together and he asked me what was going on with my album. And he said, look, you can't give up, especially if you're so close to being finished. People need to hear your record and the songs are fire. You need to put this out. So he paid for the final mixes of the ceremony. And he's one of the reasons why this record is actually out. It's interesting. This record was done last year. I was about to pull the trigger and release it, but I got called to sing background for Madonna. And so I went out and spent 8 months doing that. I wasn't going to release the record. I had been telling myself that because it had been so long and maybe people didn't want to hear me anymore. I'd been listening to my record, and every time I turned around, I was trying to find something new and wrong with it. And there was nothing wrong with this record. I love this record. It's my life. It's my business. It's me taking and reclaiming myself back. But I realized that the pandemic was a perfect time to release a record that had to do with somebody restructuring what they thought their life was supposed to be about. And COVID has caused us all to have to maybe even try something new. Be alone with ourselves, whether those changes were in the place we work or inside of our hearts. It was a time for retrospect. And the ceremony is not a preachy record, but it's a record made for that time. So I decided to just buck in the face of all the things I was supposed to do and just let the record be about that. And so I released it on 2/21/21, all angel numbers, a Sunday instead of a release Friday, because I do what I want to do. And I didn't want it to be about the record. I really wanted it to be about folks capturing it and getting it and feeling it. And I hate rules. So that's probably why I really did it. That record is dear to me. And I recognize that songs like Beautiful Ashes and Be Real, which is nothing but really just church music. Some people are never going to go to church again, but they can scream it out in their house now to be real. Or Heights, inviting us all to just decide to talk shit about where we're going and not be afraid of where we've been. I do have a lot of things in the works that will pollinate my record. and give me an opportunity to share not just my music, but myself. I'm actually on I'm doing a clubhouse tour right now. And my requirements to be selected for me to come to your room are that you have to either be in the health and wellness space, tech, um, healing, women's empowerment in some way, or parenting. Uh, I'm not going into the music rooms. I'm not performing for A&Rs. I'm performing for the people. Period. Those are people who need what I'm doing. People who, are commodifying music aren't going to hear what I have to say anyway. They're thinking about the next trap record. And that's cool. But I just want to go and make family with my fans, with people who are potential fans. And so I've had some really great luck doing that right now with the record. I'm preparing to do a short documentary on my career, my life. I'm waiting for one right now to come out on Indie Soul Stories, which is supposed to air actually on PBS. And Erykah Badu interviewed for that. So there's a lot of things happen. I don't know if there's a master plan as much as there is serendipity, perfect timing, and then things running together and blessing me and the record. So I just did a voiceover for an incredible action like anime where I am the lion goddess Sekhmet. And what's so cool about it is that it's the accoutrement, it's the extension to the actual film, of which there'll be 3 parts, and I'll be playing the lion Sekhmet for the whole trilogy. And so I basically make all the pharaohs of Egypt my avatars on Earth, and they're Kandaiki board. Well, I can't get into the whole thing, but it's pretty amazing. And so now my focus is really on doing more films like this, like being the voice of animes, creating animes, producing. But I'm really excited about this because it's a man of color. He's an artist and a singer himself named Kamiko Tarnez. This is his first film, but he's already got Diana Ross's daughter, Rhonda Ross, as one of the producers, and Hill Harper. The script is incredible. And I get to be a part of Black fantasy, which is awesome. When you think about the cosplay movement, it's, especially with Black folks, it's born of a desire to be part of a history of magic where for so long we haven't really been a part of the discussion, which is why movies like Black Panther and what we're seeing in Black horror are so important. So I'm really excited about Protector of the Gods, where I get to actually morph into a VR effect lion and have a fight with a living half woman, half snake. So it's going to be amazing. And I hope that folks will follow Protector of the Gods online and support the film when it comes out too. That's an excellent question. I would love to collaborate with Raphael Sadiq. I've always wanted to collaborate with him. I'd love to collaborate with Lenny Kravitz. He was one of my first musical loves. He got me through a major breakup in the 7th grade with It Ain't Over Till It's Over. And working with him was a dream, and I would love to make a record with him. I loved his record with Cree Summer. And some of the people I really wanted to work with are no longer with us, unfortunately. But who's new that I really love? Tame Impala is the shit. I would really love to work with them. I would love to do a record with Katrananda. That would be sick. A record with Anderson .Paak, who I met through you, and Norman, God rest his soul. Anderson .Paak is actually my music director for a show that I did at the Little Temple Bar, which was then the what do they call it now?
Virgil.
The Virgil. Yes. And so he was incredible, and I was hoping we'd be able to go on tour together, but I had just had my son and was, really concerned most of the time about how I was going to eat and feed us, then going back out to the road at the time. But I was so excited about seeing him out there, and we've come in contact throughout the years, and we've talked about doing something together. So I would love to actually see that happen. I would die right there. And then some women I would really love to work with. I would love to work with Bjork. There's an incredible new singer who is in the healing space. I actually met her on Clubhouse. Her name is Wata, and she's from Sierra Leone in DC. And so we blend on the whole Africa meets DC tip, and she's an incredible artist. So if you're on Clubhouse or Instagram, check out Wata. Who else would I love to work with? I would love to work with Georgia Ann Muldrow, and Flying Lotus would be incredible to work with. Maybe the way I decided to sequence the album might have been affected by that, but I already had my own. I already had bombs drop in my life that felt like a COVID bomb during this 10-year process. If anything, when you're listening to this record, um, it's timely for this because it's saying there's nothing new under the sun. Shit has happened. Shit is going to keep happening. How do you plan to handle it? We're not responsible for where we start, but we are for where we end up. And even though this is unfair times, and even avoidable times, we need music that tells us to keep running. We need music that tells us that this part of our lives and this time are just a intricate part of our legend, and to continue to just allow themselves to believe in possibility. I believe that that's what the ceremony is encouraging. It is not a record about a perfect experience, but it's a record about a real one. But I tell you, I will thank some people for believing in me during this time. People who will call me up and just be like, "Are you okay?" Who missed my music and will be like, "Well, anytime you're ready, you can put out a record." But most importantly, I want to thank my mother and my partner, because an artist is not an island to themselves. People take this journey with them. The depression, the highs and the lows it takes for a person to put out a piece of music. Their family travels with them on that journey. So if anybody gets a shout out, it's my partner Takala, my mother, and my son Miles Walter Song. It's all the producers that held on to the records as long as they did, who didn't sell my songs, who are pressing and popping and letting people know that their records are on my record. Thank you. They're all my sister artists who would call me up and just ask me, was I okay? Like Reese, like Mumu Fresh, Joy Gilliam, Chocolate, you, Aja Shane, CEO Tris of Fusicology, fans who would send me inboxes. Shout out to y'all. People who would still come to a show even though I hadn't released a record for them in like years, and all the new fans who have flooded my inbox with really beautiful stories about how the ceremony is helping. Those are the people I send a shout out to. Oh, and my Wiz cast from the Clubhouse, because they got me through this pandemic. Love you all. When you've been where I've been and you've seen what I've seen, a little heart, it don't mean a thing. You were built strong and tough.